welcome to our webinar for October 14th on using Schoolnet in the ELA or social studies classroom. This is a content specific session. Of course, if you do not teach ELA or social studies, you are still welcome to be here. We're just going to be exploring filter options and things that are specific to those two content standards. I am going to put the slide deck in the chat. And with Teams, I have been told that sometimes the chat does not work if your organization blocks a certain thing with Teams. So please know that you can use the Q&A feature as well. Catherine and I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A feature. So if it for some reason does not allow you to chat, please feel free to drop any questions you have in that Q&A. But let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first thing before I cut my camera off are just some brief introductions. My name is Rebecca Stokes. I'm the product manager for Schoolnet for NCDPI. My email address is there on slide 2. And again, we are so thankful that you are here with us. And I see we already have a question. So attendance. So I'm actually about to go over that in just a second. That'll be on the next slide, but then I will answer that question. Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Catherine Simone. I am from Pearson. I am the implementation manager for North Carolina, and happy to be here with you this afternoon.
We are so fortunate that Catherine joins us on these monthly or sometimes bi-weekly webinars that we have with Schoolnet. She has so much experience and knowledge in Schoolnet, so I encourage any questions you have, please send them our way. And there is no need to be sorry. I told you to ask all your questions. You are just ahead of me, so no worries on that. But speaking of attendance and CEU questions, so for attending the live webinar today, you will receive 0.1 CEUs, and just try to remember that 10 hours of credit is equivalent to 1 CEU. And while I cannot determine what type of CEU it is, your district will be able to determine that for you. So I will send you an email with the slide deck, the recording, and your CEU certificate. So as far as attendance, what happens is the Teams webinar platform tracks who has logged in. So I have your email address and it'll tell me the timestamp of how long you were in the session. So as long as you are with us for the entirety of our session today, then that will be the attendance and that'll be how you get your CEU certificate along with the email with just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. The recording and the slide deck. And if you have been on a webinar with me in the past 2.5 years, then you know I forget my thoughts while speaking quite often. This is a very low-key environment here with Catherine and I. So we understand. And that will happen. I apologize. That's just how I am. Let's see here. Want to make sure I covered everything. Oh, yes. And if you do share the recording with others, which of course is encouraged, it'll be posted on our YouTube channel, but just know that you cannot get credit for the webinar by watching the recording. So if you have any counterparts or coworkers that weren't able to make it, we do encourage share the recording, let them know where it's going to be, but they cannot receive CEUs for watching the recording. Okay. All right, so we already covered this, but just in case anyone is new that was just joining us, Teams will not allow you to unmute, but you can use the chat or the Q&A feature. So we encourage both of those, whichever one it will allow you to do. Depending on your district settings, the chat might be blocked, but the Q&A feature should still work as well. But if for some reason neither of those work for you, our email addresses are on the second slide. And just in case, I have posted the slide deck in the chat, but I am going to return here for just a minute for anybody that by chance the chat isn't working to where you could even see the things that we're posting. I want you to be able to grab that link. So it's go.ncdpi.gov/ and then all caps SN for Schoolnet, ELA, SS24. And Catherine and I will continue to post that in the chat for you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut my camera just to kind of save some bandwidth here while I'm sharing. Let me see if I can find it. There it is. All right, but let's go ahead and get started. So again, thank you so much for being here on this Monday afternoon. We appreciate you joining us to learn more about Schoolnet and how the platform can work for you in your classroom. Our goals today, like we said, this is a content specific. So we're going to explore feature options and filter options specifically for ELA or social studies teachers. And then if you are a K2 teacher, we have some specialty features in ELA for you as well. We're going to talk about some test settings that you would want to consider. And then we're going to build a sample assessment with passage grouping. And we always put Q&A at the end, but please feel free to ask your questions at any time throughout today's webinar. You do not have to save them for the end. Catherine and I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A feature the entire time. But with that, I am going to encourage you to be in your Schoolnet site. So of course you access the platform by going to your NC Cloud and clicking on the red circle with the white house. But if for some reason you are unable to do that or don't necessarily want to be kind of clicking around in your instance, we do have the training site for you. That's on slide 8. If you click this link right here, it will take you to the training site, and we have a teacher username and password here for you as well. And that is on slide 8. But again, we encourage you to be in your live site, but we do have this for you as well. All right, but I'm going to turn the screen over to Catherine, and we're going to talk about exploring filter options.
Great, thank you very much. So while you can follow along in the PowerPoint, I am going to be using the training site because I think it's just a little bit more effective to show you some of the features. So I am going to start sharing my Schoolnet screen. And Rebecca, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, all right, we're all set. So when creating a test for a specific content area, I feel the best way is to use the filters in the system, okay? Especially for ELA, there's a lot of filtering to help you narrow down your selection of items and passages. So I'd like to focus on going through a few of those things to start. If you're logged in with me here on Schoolnet, you should have your navigation to the left in the blue panel. And we're going to click the drop down next to assessments. And rather than using this test section, I am going to start in the item banks, okay? And find. So I'm going to find some items or passages. If I hover over the find and click the down arrow, you're going to see that I have a choice of find items or find passages linked to items. For my ELA teachers out there, this is a great feature, using this passage linked items and linked items, okay? For my social studies folks, you could use either. We do have passages, but you would get a richer response of items if you use the find items. So I'm going to navigate through both content areas, but I'm going to start with the item. And when my screen loads, in just a moment, I did cut my camera, so hopefully it plays nice today. You are going to see on the next screen, and please let it load quickly. We're going to start with subjects, with filters that begin with your choice of item bank, subject, grade, standards. We can filter by DOK level, Bloom's taxonomy, question language, English or Spanish, And then we have a few other features that filter features that will be available. Okay. Oh, of course, it's not going to play nice today. Let's try it again. Oh, it did. Second time around's a charm. Okay. So as I was mentioning, the over here to the left, I clicked in the items. Over here to the left are where my filters start. I can select item banks, and I do have a few more available in my site, but you as a teacher are going to see the DPI Classroom Bank. If you're an admin, you'll see the Benchmark Bank, and you will also see the Key Data Systems Bank. Sorry for scrolling up and down. Those would be the four banks, I should say, that have the most ELA and social studies items. I'm going to check those three. I'm going to actually just going to check the classroom and the KDS bank because those are the ones that are available by teachers. So those are the first two filters I chose to select, and you can see they're selected here. And then I can filter by subject. So I'm going to go down here and look at my ELA choices. And then it's always important to narrow it down a little bit more. You don't want to look through 45,000 items. So grade level, I'm going to pick a middle of the road 5th grade item here. And if I am an ELA teacher, my next favorite filter is to stop here. I know that 4,700 items is a lot, but if I click this button, find and group items by passages, now I am looking at only items that are associated to a passage, okay? And just to break this down for you, I have a passage. I can scroll down a little bit. I see this particular passage has 34 associated items. I can close them and then just go down and see what the next passage is. I can just read through the passages and decide which ones I like and choose questions. Or I can go to the standards selection. And let's just say I am working on, when I get into my standards, let's say I want to focus on informational text, okay? And maybe I am focusing on central ideas and RI3, analyzing, okay? So if I choose those standards, you can see I've checked my plus sign. It'll include any substandards that may be included there. It'll move it over here. I hit save and close. And now I'm going to get passages that have items. They may have extra items, but they definitely have items that are aligned to, you see this 5.2 and my 5.3. Okay, and then I would read through, decide which ones I want, check them, and I'll go through adding them to a test in a minute. Before I do that, though, I want to go through the rest of the features because, as I said, this is the best way to get to the closest choice of items for anything you may create. So only show items with multiple linked passages. So for this would be a paired passage. So there would be 2 passages. I'm just going to remove the standards for a minute so I can just get the full effect of this one. If I want to see items that have 2 passages, I would click this button. Oh, for 5th grade, I don't have any. I may have some for another grade. I'll go back and find that. But that's another option. I can choose questions by DOK level. I want to point out here, though, the DOK level and the blooms are only available for the Key Data Systems item bank. Okay, so those filters would not be effective for the classroom bank, okay? English language questions, these are in English. If I wanted to see Spanish translated items, I could click this filter, okay? Then at the very bottom here, I have this all filters feature. When I click on this, this opens up a whole new bunch of options. It'll retain my bank selection. I can change that later. It'll retain my subject. It'll retain my grade level. But then if I'm looking for specific item types, I could select them here. If I'm looking for two-part questions, I can select it here, multi-part questions. Then there's an entire section that's just on passage properties. So do I want a passage that's poetry, informational science, social science, literary text? Do I want my subject of my passage related to one of these, a specific grade level for my passage? If I know a title and I'm not able to find it readily, but I do know it's in the system, I could type that here. If you've created your own and saved them, you could click this here. Again, with the passage language. And then the Lexile levels are only, again, in the KDS bank. But those are all options for filtering. Also, when we update each of these banks with new items, we provide you a date that the items were loaded. So you could, there is a spreadsheet. I'll pull that up afterwards. Maybe Rebecca will get it ready for me or put the link in the chat for everybody. Hint, hint, Rebecca. We have a spreadsheet that has all the dates when different item banks have been updated. You could put the date in here, and then that would only search most recent items or items that were loaded at a certain time. So that's another option for you, okay? With any of these, you would make your selections. Oh, there she is. She got it in the chat. There is, I'll open this up real quick just to show you this and put this here on my screen. So we have this spreadsheet. The dates are up at the top. You can search by benchmark bank, classroom bank, KDS items, etc. And it'll show you the dates when new items have been added, okay? All right, once you've made your selection, either on the previous screen or in this all filter screen, you can apply your filters and go back here and choose your, I could say I want to select all. I can add it to a test. I know this is a little out of order from my PowerPoint, but since I'm in this screen, if I have an existing test, I can find it down here. If I want to create a new test, I would click up here. And then once that next screen loads, it's similar to the normal test creation process that you've probably seen us do a couple times, where you put in the test name, the subject, the grade level, the standards document, and generate your test. And then you're all set. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a moment and see if anyone has any questions regarding using filters to search items. I'm going to go back, see if anybody has any questions.
There has not been any in the chat. I have been looking
Okay.
at the Q&A in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to double back for a minute and go to my find items again. I'm just going to show you this passages and linked items. And
can I pause you real quick, Catherine?
you certainly
We did
can.
get some questions. So what were the test banks you mentioned? And
Okay.
Catherine can pull it up and show you, but I know that it was NCDPI Classroom Bank and Key Data Systems.
Yes. So there's the Key Data Systems Bank. This is the CTE Bank. I know that's not pertaining to this, but I want to make sure that you're aware of that. The math sets, the benchmark bank, if you have leadership permissions, you can use this bank. You will be able to see that. And then the NCDPI Classroom Bank. Thanks, Julie. Glad you like the filters.
And Ingrid, yes, so you are able to print as
Yes.
long as the items that you select for your test are not online only questions. Because Kevin, can you actually go to that screen with the items, the item filter? Because there's certain questions that can be printed and there's certain questions that cannot. There we go. So any on the left-hand side where it says for print and online, if your test includes those type of questions, then the test can be printed with the passage and the questions. But if you have any of the online only questions that are on the right-hand side, it cannot be printed. But I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm wondering if you are asking if you can print any of these passages separately and not necessarily on a test. And if that's the case, then Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, yes, you can if you click on a passage.
I'm going to go find one right now. And let's see. So if I open this up, and absolutely they can be used as practice, Ingrid. Let me see where. Okay, so here if I select all, I think in order to print them, you would have to, in order to print the passages, you would, no, wait a minute. Sorry, you're making me rack my brain here, but I can do this. I know I can do this. Give me a second. Let me go to, if I look at the key data systems and I go a different way into the bank, so before I was using these filters on the left, if I go over here and I just click on the passages, let me see if I can produce a print of it there. So, let me see what if I just do ELA. Okay. And I have this sickle cell anemia. I'm not sure what this one's about. I'm just picking randomly. View passage details. And I don't think it's going to give you the option here to print it, but if you do a quick add to test, right from the test, you can print it, okay? To Rebecca's point. I hope that answers your question. Okay, I just want to double back real quick for my social studies friends. If I go find items, and this time I'm not going to limit by bank, I'm just going to go down here to social studies, social sciences, and I want, not standards, so sorry. I want to focus on my middle school. Okay, I'm going to pick 5th, 6th. I can pick multiple grades here, 7 and 8. Why am I picking a 3 grade level span? Okay, so in social studies, the standards, the way they sit for North Carolina, talk about the standard. Exemplify, this one is an example of economics. exemplify ways personal financial decision-making influence the economy. But we all know that there's history ones in here, etc. So here's a history one. The problem is the standards don't necessarily reflect the eras. Is that the correct word for social studies? I apologize. I'm not the the expert on social studies, but for instance, what am I referring to? Let's say I'm teaching the Revolutionary War. I may select a standard, but the standard may cover topics in the Revolutionary War or World War I or pre-Revolutionary War. So I may not be honing in as much as I want to on my selection. So one thing we could type in here is, I mean, as simple as George Washington, we'll say, for the Revolutionary War, or and I'm making this up. I have no idea what my results are going to bring back, but score. So I want something that's attributed to something that happened during the time of George Washington. I type in that name because I think that's a good keyword for this. It's probably not, but again, I'm not the social studies expert. I apologize. But now, at least in this search bar up here, my questions are going to at least appear in the correct time frame, even though my standards may be everything from, we see here, economics to history, and different variety here. So we are working with social studies department to see if we have some alternate solutions on the way we can package the standards so you can search differently. But right now, my suggestion would be to use the keyword search up here for my social studies friends. Okay. All righty. Sorry, Rebecca, I completely lost my PowerPoint, so.
You are good. I think you covered all the filters. The only thing was the adding items to the test, but I think you did that as well.
Okay. Okay,
So,
well then I'm going
yeah,
to stop sharing and let you go to the next thing
yeah,
and
I'm
find the
gonna take
PowerPoint.
over. All right, so I'm going to take over and talk about some K2 features. So if you are a teacher of kindergarten, first or second grade, then there are some features that you might not be aware of in one of our banks. So I'm actually going to hop over. Let me make sure I'm in training. I am perfect. All right, so if I go over to the assessments on the left-hand side, and I go to the find items as well, and I'm going to use some of those same filters. So let me actually, I'm going to come down here and take off some of these other subjects. I'm going to just look at ELA for right now, and I'm going to take off. I'm going to look at just second grade for just a minute. And these features that I'm referring to are only in the Key Data Systems bank. So I'm going to click to only view that bank. All right, so let me go through, see if I can easily spot one. Got some Spanish coming through, and I should have written down which standard it was. And actually, let me hop over here. Let me go to the live site real quick. So just ignore that I'm doing the exact same thing for just a second. All right, Key Data Systems, ELA, and second grade. All right, perfect. Okay, So right here, I haven't chosen any standards yet, but I just wanted to show right off of the top. So I'm in the Key Data Systems Bank, I'm in ELA, and I'm just in second grade. So notice on this graphic gap match right here, you have an option that says listen. So this is a built-in read aloud that does not require an accommodation to be turned on. So if I preview this, and Catherine, you'll have to tell me if you can hear it because with my AirPods in, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear it or not. So
Okay.
this is what the students would see, and they would click where it says listen.
I don't hear
You didn't hear. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what she said, and it's because I have my AirPods in, so I apologize.
it.
But she said, put the word bin into the box. So the students would be able to view these words here, and they would be able to drag the correct word into the box. So it's a built-in listen. Notice the question is not there because it is a listening only question. So that is an automatic feature with some of the K2 items. Now, if I go to, let's see, it looks like we have a few of those there. I wanted to see one of the other ones as well, even though I realize now that you aren't going to be able to hear it. Let's see, let's switch over to first grade and see what we've got there. Okay, so same thing. You can see we've got some listen here. If I were to look at this one in the student view, and again, I'll read it to you. Okay, so it said listen to the sounds that are in the word pig, and she said the word pig slowly, and it says to have them put the sounds as they would be divided into the box. So again, it's a built-in read aloud. There is another question type that I know is in kindergarten, and that is one that has teacher prompts in it. So let's see if I can find one of those easily. I do have a picture of it on the slide deck, but I was going to see if I could find one off of here. Let's see. Nope. Let's see. Okay, here's one. All right, so notice this question looks a little strange because it just says multiple choice, and all it does is it has answer choices. Okay, there's no question. That's on purpose. So if I come here to view the item detail, then it actually has teacher instructions of what the teacher would read aloud to the class. So the teacher would read, what letter do you hear at the beginning of dot? They say dot again, and then they ask, is it D, B, T, or F? So this would be one that the students are completing on a device, or if you were printing out a paper copy, the teacher would read that aloud from the teacher prompt, and then the students would answer. So that is another feature in the key data systems for K2 specifically. And I'm going to come back here because I want to make sure that I didn't miss one. Oh, I did. Okay. I knew that I did. Okay, so let me go back here. And this was a garden passage specifically. I'm going to see if I can find it using my filter option here, my keyword. Let's see. Hoping to be able to find it. I'm so sorry. Okay, that's okay. I don't want to waste time by searching through, but here was one particular how does your garden grow / salsa time. So it says listen to the presentation and answer the following questions. So it has a built-in passage read aloud that again does not require an accommodation to be turned on. So you might see some questions that also have this audio with the little headphones icon and how long the read aloud is. So there are questions that have built in where the students listen to the question and it's not actually typed out. They have a built-in read aloud of what the passage is, and then also the teacher prompts. So those are specifically for K2. Is there any questions, Catherine, from anyone with K2 on those three things
Nope,
specifically? Okay.
nothing in the chat. Let me check the Q&A. Nope. All
All
good.
right, then we will keep going. All right, so something else, speaking of read aloud, are some test settings to consider um, when you are creating your assessment, whether that's in ELA or social studies. And that is referring to the read aloud. So while K2 does have some built-in features, other grade levels might not. And if your students require read aloud, I wanted to show you some things in the test settings. So if I go over to the assessments dashboard on the left-hand side, and I'm going like I'm creating a manual test. So I'm going to skip over these things here and just look at the test settings. If
Oh,
I
hold up
scroll,
for 1 minute.
mhm,
I'm going to
mhm,
answer Sherry. Yes, students in K2 can also log into Schoolnet via NC Ed Cloud. Correct? I'm saying that correctly, right? Just checking.
yes, that's
Yes,
correct.
so they do have the option.
And Sherry, also, just from sessions I've done with K2 teachers, sometimes the concern is, well, kindergartners, might not know how to read yet. So of course, you do not have to feel like you need to put K2 students on a device for a 20-question assessment, but you can pull them up on your screen, your active board, whatever it may be that you display content to the students, and you could do one whole group. You could have one in, a center. So don't feel like you necessarily as a K2 teacher would have to use it in the same way, but you do have access to so much content. So if I just look at find items, and I'm in the live site, so I know that I have all of the questions here. So if I were to just do the key data systems and the classroom bank, and let's do ELA first. So for kindergarten, there's 941 ELA questions, 1,236 first grade, and 2,535 second grade. So even though you might not use it in the same way that a sixth grade teacher might, you still have so much content that you have available to you, however you saw fit to use it with your students, whether that be whole group or centers, or if you wanted them to log on and have the assessment, but they definitely have the ability to do that.
And Rebecca, we
Let's
had one
see.
more from Julie, and I already brought up a question. So yes, Julie, to your question, the KDS, there is a KDS Spanish item bank. And within, I have one up if you want me to share real quick,
Oh,
Rebecca,
yep,
so
I
you
can,
don't lose
because
your
I was about to
place.
hop to it. Yeah, of course. I'll stop
Nope,
and you
got it.
you hop on sharing.
Okay, so this is the Key Data Systems Spanish item bank. I just did a quick filter by kindergarten, didn't filter anything else. The very first question that came up, I don't know what it says, but there is a listening option there. In fact, all of these have listening options. So yes, uh, same feature in the KDS Spanish bank as in the English language bank to answer that question. And I'll stop sharing.
Okay, and I'm actually going to answer one other question before I keep going there. So Michelle asked about saying in the past that you've been able to select your school in the test category when creating an assessment, and you can only access My Classroom now. So Michelle, that is actually not anything to do with Schoolnet. That is actually to do with the SIS. So whether you are Power School, but I'm going to assume you are Infinite Campus, what you will want to do is talk to your data manager, and they have to give you it's option number 7 in the Schoolnet roles that they can give you in the SIS, the allow teachers to share assessments. So more than likely, Michelle, what happened is that when the data came over, they had you just marked as teacher and did not have those additional permissions that you might have had in Power School, but your data manager can add that back to you and it'll sync overnight and you'd be able to have that the following day. So just ask them to add option 7, allow teachers to share assessments, and then you will be able to access those school assessments that you had created previously, and that would give any of the teachers in the building the ability to create an assessment for the grade level to be able to access. Yeah, of course, Michelle, that's why we're here. We're here to help answer these questions. Yay, Sherry, I'm so glad. There's so many K2 teachers that don't realize the amount of resources that are in there for them, just because, usually Schoolnet seems to be, more focused on, 3 through 12, but there's so much in there for K2. So I'm so glad that you were able to hop on with us today and learn some of those things. Let's see if you've covered this, but will Schoolnet transfer with Infinite Campus for those? So yeah, so we actually have, I wouldn't say half the state, but all of phase 1 that's with Infinite Campus is using Schoolnet. So yes, so next year when everyone is on Infinite Campus, Schoolnet will still be with us. The only thing, Nikki, is that, if you have the allow teachers to share assessments this year with PowerSchool, you'll just want to make sure to ask your data manager to make sure that you have that when they switch over to Infinite Campus. But yes, you will still be able to have access to all of your things that you had previously. And yep, so the only thing that might not transfer, Nikki, is if you are currently able to build shared classroom assessments or school assessments. If when you switch over to Infinite Campus, if your data manager does not have that additional permission yet, it'll appear that you don't see them. But once they add that number 7 option, then you will be able to access those. Yeah, of course. But of course, anything that's My Classroom, you will instantly see because that stays with you as a teacher. So we always encourage you to make sure that you save your assessments as My Classroom, just in case you transfer schools or you transfer districts. You don't have to worry about losing your things because they are tied to your account. But yeah. Okay. I'm trying to remember. I think I was talking about special considerations, things to remember. All right, so let me share my screen again. Okay,
Did you finish the passages, enabling text-to-speech in the passages yet?
I don't even think I have started it yet. I think that's where I left off.
That was the slide that was up, so I was just making sure. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
Let's see. And we do have another question. Either district are created by the same people. Who makes the other key? Oh, okay. Yep. So the NCDPI ones are written by the same people that are writing your questions for your end of grade and end of course assessments. And Key Data Systems, that is a bank we purchase for teacher use from the company Renaissance. So the same company that does Star Reader, Accelerator Reader, Star Math. I'm sure they do a ton other things as well, but those are just the 3 that I remember from being in the classroom. And no, not anyone can add to those banks. That just comes strictly from that company that we purchase for just additional questions for you guys. So the only people that can add to those banks is that company specifically, and we get 4 uploads a year from them, but they are tied to our North Carolina standards. But they are not going to be written in necessarily the same exact language that the Classroom or the Benchmark Bank are, but they're going to have a lot of the content that you are looking for and question types. All of the technology enhanced items are going to be coming from Key Data Systems because the DPI, Classroom, and Benchmark Bank are 99% multiple choice and maybe 1% open response, but all of the technology enhanced items are going to be in that Key Data Systems. And it also has those built-in read aloud features that we don't get from the other bank. And they gave us a lot of the science items that we did not get in our first upload from DPI as well. So of course, use whichever banks you find are best for your classroom, but just know that you have the option for any of those banks. Yeah, of course. Of course. Okay, so let me close out of here. So speaking of read aloud, because we know that majority of the time when a student has an IEP or an accommodation with read aloud, that it does not include ELA. But if you do have a student that does have read aloud for ELA for some reason, wanted to show you. If I am going to the assessments and I'm right underneath find, I'm going to go like I'm creating a manual test. And if I go to the test settings, okay, here. So we do have the accommodations here, but I wanted to point out that text to speech and text to speech for passages are two separate settings, okay? And if you are social studies and there is a passage associated with the questions as well, you will want to make sure that you have the text to speech for passages turned on for social studies. And for ELA, you will need to, if your student has an accommodation that requires their passages be read aloud, then I would recommend enabling text to speech for passages, but only assigning it to that one student. Because any student that has the accommodation of read aloud turned on, and I'll show you in just a minute how to do that, any student that has read aloud turned on in their profile, they would be able to get text to speech if you have it turned on here. So not every student is going to have an accommodation for a passage to be read aloud. So if for some reason you are turning this on for an ELA assessment, it would just be for that one student more than likely. So I would turn it on and only assign it to that one student, make a copy of the assessment, and then turn this off for the other students that don't have that accommodation, okay? But I know that is a special circumstance and not usually what occurs. So I just wanted to point out that text to speech here will read the question and the answer choices, whereas this enable text to speech will read the passage separately. Okay. All right, I just realized I am in the live site, so let me hop out of that and go back to the training site to show you. If you are not aware of how to turn on read aloud feature for your students, I am logged in as a teacher. So let's say that the student that I needed to check accommodations for was in my reading section. So in the drop down, I would select the class that they are in. And then if I scroll down, I'm going to see my classroom profile. So I'm going to see all of the students that are rostered in that section. And let's say it's this student, student 265. If I click on that student, then their profile is going to come up, and the very last tab, this test nav PNP, this is where accommodations are turned on. So you can see this student already had text to speech turned on. And this is what I was referring to, that if this student has text to speech, but their IEP specifically says that the read aloud is only for science, social studies, and math, then you'll want to make sure that you are not turning it on your ELA assessments in the test settings. But if the student did have that on their IEP that said their ELA assessments needed to be read aloud, then you could create an assessment, turn on the read aloud for the passage, and just assign it to this one student. But it has to be turned on in the student's profile as well as the settings of the test. Okay. All right. Any questions, Catherine, on the read aloud? I didn't see
No,
any, but
nope,
okay.
no new ones. We're still at the same ones that we had before.
All right. So the only thing we had left was we were going to build a sample ELA assessment. Do you want to do that, or you want me to do that?
It's up to you.
Well, I've got it up, so I don't mind.
Okay, fair enough.
So, all right, so I'm going to go back to the training sites. I'm going to come over on the left-hand side where it says assessments, and I'm going to click create underneath test, and I am going to click manual. I know that there are some teachers that really enjoy the express test, but I personally, and I think Catherine too, we recommend manual over express because of you actually selecting the questions yourself. Um, because sometimes teachers will tell me, well, I just create an express test and then I delete the ones I don't want. Well, if you're going to do that, you might as well build a test that includes only the questions that you did want in the first place. So anytime we do a training, we always recommend manual, but of course, you have the option to do what is best and what you like best. But for this training, I'm going to click manual. So I do have to create, excuse me. So I'm going to put ELA sample test. And I am not going to go over all of the things that you have to fill in here just because that would have been covered in our basics session. So I'm going to go 7th grade and I'm going to go ELA, and I'm not going to worry about any of the settings and restrictions and things for this particular example. But I'm going to use items from item bank. And it's going to think about it for a minute. A long minute. Always. There we go. All right, so I am going to select my banks and I'm going to select key data systems and classroom. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select my standards. For this one, I'm just going to focus on ELA and then we'll go back and do one for social studies as well. So let's say I just wanted RI 2 and 3. And then I'm going to make sure to click find and group items by passages. And one additional filter, I'm going to come here to all filters, and I know that I'm going to need a paper copy of this assessment. So I'm going to filter my items by the print and online because I want to make sure that I can print my paper copy for that one student that has an accommodation that requires they take a paper pencil test. So I'm going to click apply filters, and now I have 480 items. I can preview my passage, and I have 9 items matching. So I'm going to select all 9 of those so that I know that my students read one passage and have 9 questions that match the standards that I chose. So I saw 2 7.2s. I can see there's 7.3. There's another one. So it's only going to show me the questions based on the standards I have selected over here. So I'm going to add those items to my test. And we're going to say that this is going to be, excuse me, a quick formative. So I've got those 9 items. I have my passages linked. And this one has teacher explanations here as well. Notice that. And I'm going to preview this test as a student before I save it. I always recommend doing that as well. Come on, 9 questions. Okay, so I can see the passage here, and that passage would actually be on every page for the students, so they don't have to click back to view the passage on each question, because it's going to keep it all together and they will be able to see it on each one. Okay. All right. Then I would return to my test details and I would go through the process of finalizing this test and scheduling it. Catherine, did you have a question?
I
heard
did
you
not.
breathing. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, apologize. It was that breathing where you think that someone's about to say something. So, all right. And I'm actually going to go create, and I'm going to do the same thing for my social studies. And again, if you have a question about the scheduling of the test, then that would have been covered in our August and September sessions that we do have recordings of, where you can email us and I'd be happy to meet with you separately. I'm going to do 10th grade and social studies. And same thing that Catherine was mentioning before, you can use the keyword or text here, but I, like Catherine, am not a social studies or history expert. I taught math, so I would not even know what to type in that keyword for this. So I'm going to just go to my standard, and I'm going to go geography. And then I'll be able to preview the question and select the one that I wanted. I like those four. This is going to be an exit ticket. So I would click Add to Test. And then I would be able to preview them like my other questions that I had on my ELA assessment. And I can preview, return to test details, and then I would also be able to go through and finalize the assessment. Okay. So the biggest takeaway that we want you guys to have from today is that first section of the filters and the options that you have with those. And then of course our K2 teachers, those built-in read aloud features. But your best friend when building an assessment in Schoolnet, whether you're ELA or social studies, is going to be those filters, really getting it narrowed down to the specific passage type or using the keywords to for our social studies friends to be able to narrow down the content or the area you are looking for when searching through those standards.
And we
Let's
have one
see.
more question.
Yep.
So Mary, no, you can just select one standard.
Mm-hmm.
You do not, I just did an example of selecting two, but you can pick one.
Yep. So if I go back here, I can actually delete all of these out. And when I go to my standards, let's see, social studies, then I could drill down as small as I possibly wanted. And some of our standards, have a part A, B, C. Those are going to show as well. So you can get down as small on the standard as you would like to assess. Yeah, of course. All right. So there was one other thing that I wanted to show you, and it's actually in the live site. When I was referring to if you weren't sure how to schedule the assessment, on your splash page is where we have all of the webinars for this year. So the new or beginning teacher training in September, or the top 10 things you need to know on September 30th. Both of those actually go over the scheduling process with Schoolnet assessments. So if you are new to Schoolnet, we do encourage you to view those recordings of the sessions that we did in September. But let's see, next we have using Schoolnet in the math classroom. So if you have some teachers in your building that are specifically math teachers, then I would ask that you encourage them to join our session on October 28th, where we will be talking about using Schoolnet in just a math classroom. But that is all that we have for you today, other than questions that some of you might have. But before we talk about a question that I see, oh, yep, we're going to answer that in just a second. We thank you so much for being here with us today. It looks like we're going to give you 2 minutes back. We finished 2 minutes early, Catherine, if you can believe it.
Oh, woohoo.
I know that never happens for us. But for those of you that have joined us and do not have any additional questions, we thank you so much for being with us today. It will probably be Friday by the time I get the recording CEU certificate to you. So if you have not heard from me by Friday, please feel free to reach out and email. That is on the second page of our slide deck, but you should have received that by Friday. Yeah, of course. Of course, Catherine. We were happy to answer that email. So yeah, of course. So let me go back and read this question. All right, when you finish, can I ask a question that's CTE related? Of course. When you were filtering, you saw an item bank that you have been searching for. All right, so yes, there is a CTE item bank.
I have it up. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so CTE is just a little bit different when you're searching. And just want to clarify that, but I would go, if I were a CTE teacher, I would go to assessments, I would go to item banks, I would go to the NC CTE unsecure
Oh,
bank?
she was looking for the IPOL questions.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay,
She
those
just put it in there.
are, oh, okay. Those are private banks. Rebecca and I do not control access to those. Um, I know they're having some rework done on them right now, um, some realignment. Um, but let me see if I have one here that I can find. The CTE IPOL item bank. Is that the one you're looking for?
Yes. Yep, she was looking for the
Okay.
indicator. Oh,
Okay.
yep.
So, okay.
So she said they had
So,
access last year, but not this year.
right. Okay.
Yep.
So some of the standards were archived. And so I do know this team that put this item bank together. I just spoke with them last week. They are in the process of realigning. You can see right now there's no standard alignment to these. They are in the process of realigning these items. And then we'll most likely share the bank out after that.
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, if you have any questions, our email addresses can be found on that page 2, or just rebecca.stokes@dpi.nc.gov. But we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and look forward to seeing you at future sessions. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Catherine, thank you as always for being with us.
Thanks, Rebecca.